Good evening, students. In today's session, we will discuss ethics, integrity, and aptitude, paper 4 of your GS syllabus, a very important area, and it has a bearing directly on your essay as well. So, in today's session, I'm going to basically tell you how to prepare, how to score that 130 plus marks in ethics. Let's begin with understanding what you have to know to score this in ethics. Firstly, you should understand what is the demand of the paper. What should you do? What are they expecting out of you? What are their expectations? First, you should know that. Then you should decode the syllabus. It is very, very important that you break the syllabus to the maximum minimal stick point. So, the more detailed decoding of the syllabus, the better. Understanding ethics syllabus is very, very extremely important. The third important aspect of this is you have to understand PYQs. PYQs are very, very important for UPSC, most important for ethics because ethics PYQs tend to get repeated. Off late, they are not doing it, but they tend to repeat it. And from PYQs, you get a lot of info on which you can prepare for ethics. Without reading the PYQs of ethics, it is not possible for you to prepare on ethics. And the most important, once we do these three, then we have to decide on our approach. In the approach, I'll also tell you how to approach current affairs from an ethics perspective and so on with a few examples. Now, let's begin with understanding the demand of the paper. If you see the syllabus in the UPSC notification, the syllabus itself says this paper will include questions to test the candidate's attitude and approach to issues relating to integrity, probity in public life, problem solving approach to various issues, conflicts faced by him in dealing with society. Okay, questions may utilize the case study approach to determine these aspects. Now, the words that I have underlined are extremely important because they want to know the candidate's approach, they want to know the candidate's attitude, candidate's reaction to issues that are related to people's integrity, probity in public life, problem solving approach. So, what does this tell? That is the reason why in most of your questions, if you notice, if you have seen the PYQs, they'll ask you, in your opinion, okay, in your view, this will be there in your question, in your view, okay, suggest suitable examples. What according to you? Okay, all these are to know your perspective, your understanding. How do you look at a situation? What do you understand out of the situation? How do you process it? How do you analyze it? How do you react to it? Your reaction is your way forward. So these are the four things. It could be any issue. It could be related to, say, for example, recently there have been articles on the pressure exerted on civil servants in the state of Andhra Pradesh, which is leading to resignations because a very young IPS officer has resigned from his service. Though he claimed that the resignation has got nothing to do with political pressure, buzz is that there is a lot of political pressure. Okay, so how do you handle political pressure? There could be cases on how to handle political pressure. There could be cases on there could be questions on the thin line between political executive and permanent executive and the pressure that the permanent executive is facing. How can your code of conduct guide you? What kind of code of ethics is required? So these kind of questions can be asked. Please remember, ethics is all about how you look at things, how you understand things, how do you analyze them, and how do you react to it. Ethics is a very easy paper if you have a very practical approach. Usually in my classes, I give them a lot of examples. Give them examples for integrity, for probity, for morals, for ethics, for concepts like honesty. How do you differentiate between different concepts? So I give them a lot of examples. When you're able to relate to real life, that is where ethics becomes very easy. And they expect you to have an application point of view, not a theoretical point of view. You don't need philosophy for this. You need simple common sense to score in ethics. So this is the demand of the paper. Now let's look at the syllabus. This is the first unit. It says ethics and human interface. It talks about essence, determinants, and consequences of ethics and human actions, dimensions of ethics, ethics in private and public relationships. Basically, we begin with understanding the difference between, see, we talk about ethics, we talk about morals, then there is a word called values. Do all these mean the same, or is there a difference between these? Understanding these concepts and the difference within them is very, very important. What do you mean by ethics? What do you mean by human interface? How is essence different from determinants, consequences? Okay, what determines your ethics? What is the essence of ethics? Essence is where we talk about the content, the core of ethics. Why is it important? Okay, what determines your ethical base? What are the consequences of having ethics in life? How do they influence human action? So here there will be a lot of questions on a conceptual perspective. Ethics in public and private relationships are very important. Are they common? Are they different? What are the similarities? What are the differences? How important are ethics in public life as well as private life? So this will be the first part of your syllabus, followed by human values. Basically, what do you mean by a value? Already I've written here. And usually in my first class, I start with what is ethics, what is morals. There are basic terms that you have to understand. Usually, generally speaking, we do not distinguish between ethics and morals. We look at it from the same perspective. But trust me, there is a difference between ethics and morals. There is a lot of difference between ethics and morals. People do not realize that there is a difference. So, you need to know the difference between these terms. Here, we are talking about human values. What are human values? How are these different from public service values? Most of them will be common. There will be a few differences here and there. Lessons from the lives and teachings of great leaders, reformers, administrators. Here you have to remember there was a question in your PYQs on Savitri Bai Pule. So at least pick up 6, 7 administrator reformers and know about their contribution to the society. What ethical contribution have they done? Like pick up Raja Ram Mohan Roy, then you have Jyotiba Phule, you have the self-respect movement in South India. So like this, you have to pick up reformers. This actually overlaps with your history part. You need to know their contributions in order to give it an ethical perspective. Then leaders, usually the most asked is Mahatma Gandhi, followed by APJ Abdul Kalam, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So you have to know about their lives. You have to pick up examples from their lives, and then you can quote them. For example, there is a very famous story of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. A mother brings her son to him and tells him to tell the son not to eat too many sweets because the boy was eating too many sweets. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa asked the mother to come back after 3 days. She goes back after 3 days and he tells the son not to eat. Then she asks him, "Why did you could have told it the first time I came. Why did you ask me to come back?" Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, "I cannot preach the what I don't practice." So, you have to preach what you practice is a very important ethical idea that we talk about in our culture in general also. Only when you preach what you practice, it has an impact. Otherwise, it does not have an impact. Like this, you have to pick up small stories. These stories, these instances can get you very good marks in ethics. And administrators, you don't have to essentially look at the very famous administrators. You can also pick up administrators from your day-to-day life. Usually in the classes, I give examples of people like S.R. Sankaran. S.R. Sankaran was a IAS officer from the South India, Andhra Pradesh cadre, and he prominently contributed to the development of the downtrodden section, especially the SCs and STs. So, what all did he do? How was he? He was practically worshipped by people. So, S.R. Sankaran is one. Then we talk about T.N. Seshan as the Election Commission of India, Commissioner of India. What difference did he make to elections? Remember, these are not just related to polity, they are related to ethics, because having free and fair elections can ensure a proper government in place, and having a good government in place can ensure good governance, and governance is part of ethics. Likewise, whenever I talk about the role of family in inculcating values, I remember this is an incident a long time back, around 5 years back. It was about a very beautiful story of a small boy. He would be around 8 or 9 years, not more than that, of Northeast, where he was going on a cycle and he happened to hit a chicken, a hen. He was so upset that his cycle rode over the hen. He ran to his house, took money from his piggy bank, went to took the hen, ran to the doctor, and pleaded with the doctor to save the hen. That shows his empathy. That shows the empathy that the family has inculcated in him. So examples like this are very important. And our culture, Indian culture, deeply emphasizes on the role of family. We talk about family is the first level of socialization for a child. We learn a lot from the parents. So parenting, family, issues today that we have in our society with children, with students, suicides, juvenile crime is increasing. All these are social issues. And tomorrow, as an administrator, you have to ponder about this. You have to think about the reasons why they are happening. How should you address these problems? In recent times, if you notice, there have been instances of increasing juvenile crime. There have been instances of increasing suicides in youngsters. Why is it happening? Where is the family failing them? Where is the society failing them? So we have to look at the practical dimension apart from preparing on how family, society, and educational institutions can inculcate values. Now, moving forward, attitude is a very important concept. This is um, See, attitude is a word which is usually used in a wrong context. When we say, oh my God, she has a lot of attitude, it is used in a negative shade. But no, attitude is not about negative or positive. Attitude is basically how do you look at things, what do you understand of it, and how do you react. The reaction can be good, the reaction can be bad. It is as simple as when you have a half glass, do you see the half glass empty or do you see the half glass full? That defines your attitude. And attitude is everything. Attitude will determine your entire life, your personal life, your professional life, what you aspire for, what you achieve in life. Everything is determined by attitude. Attitude has content. We say ABC. So what is the content, what is the structure, how important is attitude? Its influence and relation with thought and behavior. And then moral and political attitudes. In India, both moral and political attitudes are very important. Whenever we talk about increasing crimes against women, increasing corruption in society, we say the the ethos of the society, the moral vision of the society itself is eroding. That is the reason why we have these whole problems increasing. Now, questions, if you check your PYQs, you have questions on these lines. That is how they are talk about. Political attitude is also important. We talk about election, the spends in election, the money given to the voters' behavior. All this comes as a part of your ethics syllabus. You should know all this. Social influence and persuasion is a very important topic. It also determines the reason why social influence and persuasion is given here is it determines your attitude towards a lot of things. For example, what is your attitude towards a girl child? How do you look at the education of women? What is your take on LGBTQ? How do you look at it? How is it influenced? And social influence and persuasion has a lot of bearing on the governance, on public policy in India. For example, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao is a very beautiful campaign that had a profound influence on the perception of having a girl child amongst many parents. You had many women achievers as models chosen by the government as role models for these for this scheme. Likewise, if you have noticed advertisements like, there is a very beautiful ad where a purple card is given by the mother to all in the neighborhood saying, my daughter is coming home for the first time. Please come and welcome. I'm throwing a party. It is International Women's Day. Everybody is surprised because everybody knows that she has only a son. She does not have a daughter. In the evening, when everybody goes to the party, a girl walks in, and everybody then realizes that her son got an sex change operation and he has become a daughter. So, this change, when we visualize such things, when we show people such things, they tend to have an influence. That is social influence. Persuasion, how do you persuade? You can persuade through rules, through laws. You can also persuade people by giving examples. So persuasion is a form of social influence. This is what we have to read. Say, I'm trying to give you a more practical approach to ethics, a more example oriented approach to ethics. I have come across a lot of students when I correct answers, when I correct scripts, when I talk to students, especially those who are scoring less in ethics. I have noticed that they are sticking a lot to the theoretical aspect, the philosophical part. Please understand, general studies is different from an optional. General studies, we expect you to have a general view of things. We don't expect you to go deeper and use too much of optional jargons. But for example, in ethics, what happens is people tend to use a lot of philosophical terms, philosophical jargons, theories, prepositions, and so on. You should not do that, because this is not a philosophy optional paper. This is a part of general studies. So please remember this. This is about attitude. Now, moving forward, we say aptitude and foundational values for civil services. Foundational values of civil services is very, very important. This is where you get your ARC report, Administrative Reforms Commission report, Ethics and Governance. And this is where you talk about the Committee on Public Life of UK, which has given the 9 principles, which we call as the Nolan principles. Here you have all these terms: integrity, impartiality, non-partisanship. The most asked term is integrity. You know why? Because if you have integrity, you have everything else. If you don't have integrity, even if you have the remaining, it does not make a lot of difference. Integrity is something that can encompass all other values. So integrity is the most asked till date, followed by, they usually combine terms and ask you, like, impartiality and non-partisanship go together. Unless you are non-partisan, you cannot be impartial. Objectivity, dedication to public service is another important term on which you get a lot of questions. Empathy is another important term. Empathy is very, very important in public service. In your case study, especially, this particular chapter will be very useful, because whenever you talk about an ethical dilemma in your case studies, you have to talk about what dilemma you're facing. You have to use these terms in your analysis of the case, in your options that you give in the case, in your conclusions. And at times, you will not believe me, there will be a dilemma, conflict within two foundational values. So objectivity and empathy can at times stand opposite to each other. So that can also happen. That is the reason why you should know each term, definition, couple of examples. Take examples, general examples. One general example, I usually ask my students to do this. Take one general example and take one example from the services, from public servants who have displayed this, who've been objective in their decisions, in problem solving, in conflict resolution, in addressing an issue. You have to pick up these examples and give. Examples are very, very important. Now, moving forward, the next is emotional intelligence. This is one of my favorite topics in your syllabus, and this is a topic which I believe that everybody has to have. Emotional intelligence is something that determines your relationships, that has a bearing on your mental health. Because if you understand your emotions properly, you acknowledge them and you use them, you can benefit out of it. You can do a lot of good to the society also. So you should have absolute understanding of your emotions. There are concepts in emotional intelligence, there are stages in emotional intelligence. First, it is about understanding your emotions. It is about acknowledging your emotions. I'll give you a very small example. Whenever a person is angry, you go and tell him, why are you getting angry? He'll shout all the more. He'll say, am I angry? Am I angry? And he'll shout. That shows that that person may know that he's angry, but he's not ready to acknowledge that he's angry. So, understanding emotions is one thing, acknowledging emotions is another thing. Because unless you accept your emotional state of mind, you cannot use it, you cannot work on it. It is very, very important to accept. At times you feel low. It is okay to feel low. Please accept it. So, understanding your emotions, acknowledging it, controlling them, and then reacting to others' emotions. All these are stages in emotional intelligence. How does emotional intelligence help a person individually? Personal life, what is the significance? Professional life, what is the significance? What is the significance in administration and governance? I'll give you a small example for this. You being a public servant, there will be thousands of people you interact with. There will be thousands of eyes that watch you, and the more number of eyes that watch you, the more focus on you, the more will be the idea about you, the perception of you as a person, your personality, your character. The ability to take all this, all this is thrown at you as a public servant. You should be capable of managing so many emotions flowing towards you. You should be in a position where you know what exactly fits you and what does not fit you. There will be a lot of pressure, there will be a lot of criticism. Whatever action you take, there will be 100 critics, there will be 100 supporters. So this kind of pressure for a public servant to handle it is very, very important that they have very good emotional intelligence. Why is emotional intelligence so important? Is important. And then we talk about examples of emotional intelligence, again in administration, again in governance. Emotional intelligence, the core of emotional intelligence is empathy. Empathy, we relate the values of foundational values of civil service with emotional intelligence. Questions can be asked from this perspective. So this is about emotional intelligence. Then contributions of moral thinkers and philosophers. Please remember, the most asked are Socrates, Immanuel Kant. We talk about Swami Vivekananda. Then we have APJ is asked a lot. Abdul Kalam ji is asked a lot. His quotes are asked a lot. Then Gandhi ji is asked a lot. Then we have Thiruvarur. He is asked a lot. So there are a lot of quotations. Now you can tell me, ma'am, there are so many quotations. On how many quotations should we prepare? First, go through what has been asked in your previous year questions. Then, usually, what happens is these are picked up from the speeches that are given on Independence Day, on Republic Day, on important events and incidents. For example, when Venkaya Naidu Garu was the vice president, there were a lot of questions that were picked up from his speeches. His speeches used to be very interesting and very philosophical. The speeches also, you might feel that they're overwhelming because there are many speeches given by many people. Don't bother about all these speeches. Only look at a few quotations. Even in the budget, at times, I don't know if you've noticed, they give quotes. Okay, so these quotations become potential questions for you. Try to practice these. They will help you to overcome this part. And then you have public service values in ethics and public administration, status and problems, ethical concerns and dilemmas is where your case studies come from. In government and private institutions also, also talk about private institutions. For example, there have been questions previously about sexual harassment at workplace, even in private institutions. Now, what is the role of laws, rules, regulations, and conscience as ethical guides? How do laws work as ethical guides? Whenever we talk about the importance of law as ethical guide, we talk about child labor, issues like child labor. There are many people of the opinion that if a child does not have parents, orphaned, does not have a mother, has a step parent, or is come from a very poor background, let him work. At least he'll be able to feed himself. This is generally what people think. But law says child labor is not allowed. End of the story. It is guiding your behavior. So, like that, what is the role of laws, rules, regulations, and your conscience? Your most important tool we talk about in as an ethical guide is your conscious, your inner self, which tells you what is right and what is wrong. Then accountability and ethical governance, strengthening of ethical and moral values. How do you improve ethical and moral values and governance? Here you have certain topics which are not directly listed, like gender sensitization. Gender sensitization is a very important aspect of strengthening ethical and moral values, because gender sensitization determines it has a profound impact on how women and women related issues are addressed in public services. In all kinds of public services, like how a police station handles a rape or an teasing case. In fact, last year you had a question in ethics where they asked about the problems faced by female officers. One of the biggest problems they face in female officers face in their service, it is called insubordination. I don't know if you've heard of this. It is called insubordination. If you have watched movies, I give a lot of examples of a lot of movies also in the ethics the classes, because they really help you to understand the concept better. Insubordination, for example, an IPS officer in North is usually called as Madam Sir. Accepting a female boss is very difficult, and especially this happens in a uniform service. People, औरत के नीचे क्या काम करना? How can I work under a woman? Is a typical attitude, stereotyping that happens in our society. So insubordination is a major issue that a woman faces in public service, a female officer faces in public service. Like this, there will be a number of issues, and these are usually teach along with social issues, because a good understanding of social issues is very, very important to solve few questions in ethics. For example, when this Me Too campaign was going on, there were a lot of questions, case studies, and questions on sexual harassment at workplace in your ethics paper. You can refer. So, whatever contemporarily relevant social issue is going on, that will be asked in your ethics paper. For example, we recently had a very unfortunate dowry death in Tamil Nadu, and people were raising questions on the impact of law. Can law really solve a social problem like dowry? So we talk about a lot of ethical concerns in this. Like this, we have to pick up topics. We also had incidents like spouse murders, spouse murdering the other spouse. So, what is happening with the Institute of Marriage in India? These things can be asked. This year, ethics, all this will be a focus. And the most important, if you ask me, 100% a question will be asked is international relations. IR is very, very important. You have so many disturbances, so much of violence, so many wars happening right now. There will be questions on international relations. They can question about the importance of organizations like UN. They can last year there was a question on international funding support. We talk about it was specially asked because China, in the name of giving a helping hand, in the name of giving support, is trying to establish bases in Sri Lanka, in Nepal, in Pakistan, that can actually become a threat to us. So it threatens our sovereignty, our territorial integrity. So, like this, questions can be asked. International relations is absolutely important this year. And then we have corporate governance. What is corporate governance? Why is it important? Why should you have ethics in corporate governance? Because if corporate governance is ethical, it will have a positive impact on the society as a whole. And this is where we also talk about corporate social responsibility. Now, moving forward, probity in governance, concept of public service, philosophical basis of governance and probity. What do you mean by probity? What do you mean by probity in governance? Firstly, you should understand what is governance. Then we talk about information sharing and transparency in government. This is where we talk about the RTI Act. There was a question on RTI. RTI is very, very important. It overlaps with governance as well as ethics. Okay. And then we talk about right to information, it is there. Codes of ethics, code of conduct, most asked in this chapter, according to me, the most asked is code of ethics and code of conduct, citizens charter, work culture, quality of service delivery, utilization of public funds, and challenges of corruption. Challenges of corruption includes a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is a topic that has been repeatedly asked in your ethics paper. Now, in this chapter, we look more from an ethical perspective. Again, we talk about foundational values. Everywhere, foundational values will come. We talk about, see, for example, transparency is also a very important value. Transparency leads to accountability. Without transparency, there is no accountability. So, we refer to those public service values in every topic. And we talk about which public service values can be enhanced, can contribute. For example, citizens charter is very, very important because it ensures that there is transparency, it ensures that there is accountability, it ensures that there is efficiency and effectiveness in public service delivery. So, like this, we have to relate to the public service values to these concepts. Now, this is the overview of your syllabus. When we look at the questions that are usually asked, the first set of questions, I always tell students that you have to go through the PYQs to understand your preparation for ethics. Definitions are absolutely important. Every term in your syllabus and every term that is not mentioned in your syllabus but asked in your PYQs, you have to know the definition. They will ask you define the following terms. They'll give you 5 terms for a 10 marker or 4 terms for a 10 marker, or they will give you 3 terms and they'll ask you to give a definition and an example. So definitions are very, very important. Identify the keywords both in your syllabus and your PYQs. Ensure that you know the meaning and also have suitable examples for them. This is very, very, very important. The second important thing is there be certain concepts that go beyond a definition. For example, you have probity in governance, you have emotional intelligence. You can't just know the definition of emotional intelligence, attitude, probity in governance, and leave it at that. It will not help you in any manner. So you have to know the concepts in detail. What do I mean by this? You have to know the meaning. For some of them, you will have stages like as I said for emotional intelligence, then for some of them you have characteristics. Okay, what are their features? Then for some you have dimensions. For some dimensions are like, if you have a triangle, this is a dimension, this is a dimension, this is a dimension. So determinants of ethics or determinants for some, what determines your emotional intelligence? Okay, what contributes, how, what constructs your emotional intelligence? So determinants, all these depending on the concept you should be able to study. They are very, very important. Also, there will be some in both of these, this is applicable what I'm telling you. There will be a need to understand the differences between concepts, between words, because they also give differences are asked in questions. Ethics versus morals. What is the difference between ethics and morals? As simple as this. What is the difference between ethics and morals? Empathy versus sympathy. Uh, these terms, you have to not just understand the meaning, but you should be able to clearly distinguish between two terms. The differences should be very clear so that those differences can be asked. Then there will be another major chunk. I'm talking about the theoretical aspect of your paper. Major chunk of questions that come from statements or quotes. They will give you a quote and they'll ask you, what do you understand out of this? Give examples, give contemporary examples, or give examples from your personal life, or give examples from governance. But quotes are very, very important. And I've already told you the source. Please remember, most important source will be the speeches. In India, Unity Day in India, a speech is given. Good Governance Day, a tweet by the Prime Minister which has a quote can be a question for you in ethics. So speeches, judgments, even the judges in their judgments or judicial observations by the judges give certain observations. These observations can also be asked as a statement and they'll ask you to write about it. So these are very, very important. Most probably in your exam, 90% of your theory questions will be on this pattern. Once you understand this, it becomes very easy to prepare your notes. Now, finally, let's understand what should be your approach to ethics paper. See, for ethics, now you understood all this. You should ask me, ma'am, where do we begin? The first thing that you have to begin with is please start with your definitions. Identify keywords. This is the first step. Okay, ensure that you have some examples for them. Ensure that you have a proper idea of the meaning and the differences between the words. The second is then go to concepts. As I said here, the questions, similarly you have to know about the concepts. Everything related to the concepts is very, very important. Third, contemporary is absolutely important. Now, what do I mean by contemporary? Contemporary issues can be asked from an ethical perspective. So, from news, you should be able to pick up issues that are very important for your ethics. It could be a social problem, or it could be a conflict situation, or it could be crisis management. For example, there's an unfortunate natural disaster, okay, and the officer in charge, it could be an IAS, IFS officer, had taken very good measures to mitigate the situation, and that can be a case study for your exam. They can give you that case, and they can ask you, how do you solve if you're there? A social problem can be given as a question. As I said, sexual harassment at workplace has been repeatedly asked when the Me Too campaign was going on. Okay. Uh, Political pressure related case study can be asked this year because there's a lot of political pressure on bureaucracy which is coming into the press. So that can be asked. Um, International relations, a lot can be asked because we have a lot of conflicts going on. Last year there was a question on AI. I very clearly remember in 2024 there were several international forums and forums where people were raising questions on the ethical aspect of artificial intelligence, the latest technological update. The big question that it raises is, what about the ethical dimension of artificial intelligence? And that was a question in 2024. Contemporary issues are very, very important, especially 2024 paper had a lot of questions that are current related. And I have picked up a few of them for you to understand. For example, they've asked a question on Bharat Nyaya Sanhita, the new penal code of India, and trust me, these words is justice, equality, and impartiality based on Indian culture and ethos. These words, as it is, are picked up from PIB, where in PIB they have given an article on the importance of Bharat Nyaya Sanhita. So, as it is, they were picked up justice, equality, and impartiality. Impartiality, justice, equality are also values of your constitution, are also values of civil services. So you have to relate these values with the provisions of Bharat Nyaya Sanhita. Discuss this in the light of major shift from a doctrine of punishment to justice in the present judicial system. So this was a question that was asked on BNS last year. Then we had another question on application of artificial intelligence. It will help you, no doubt, it will help you in decision making. But what about the ethical perspective of it, especially with regard to administration? This was asked. Then this is about IR. It is about, as I said, what about um, uh, the reaction of the developed nations. Developed nations talk a lot about peace. They talk about a lot about disengagement, about not engaging, not going for a war, and so on. It is not enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it, and it is not enough to believe in it. One must act upon it. So, are the developed countries really working towards it? This question is about that. What are the ethical considerations of the powerful nations in today's international arena to stop continuation of ongoing conflicts? This was specifically asked with the backdrop of Russia-Ukraine war. So these are the questions that I have picked up. A few of them I've picked up. Last year, especially 2024, was completely contemporary relevant. There were more and more questions on contemporary issues. This year, mark my words, there will be at least one question on IR. IR is in the ethics and international relations is going to be absolutely important for 2025 exam. There can be questions on the pressure exerted on bureaucrats, political pressure exerted on bureaucrats, how to handle it. These can be questions. They can also pick up questions as we move forward of the latest developments. There can be questions on that. So ethics has a lot to do with current affairs. From a current affairs perspective, look at when you read anything, remember your syllabus of ethics and see if there anything in the article correlates with your syllabus. One. Two, whenever you come across incidents and events in news, see if they have a bearing on the concepts in ethics or the keywords in ethics. Can you pick them as examples? Are there any good examples that you can pick up? This is second. And third, larger ethical questions are raised in your articles and your editorials. Those ethical questions can appear in your exam. So, this is about your approach to ethics. I again repeat, ethics is one of the most easiest and scoring part of your syllabus, provided you are willing to understand the approach from a very practical perspective. Please do not go from on a philosophical high. Please do not have a complete theoretical approach. It's not going to help you to score in ethics. It is important that you have a more practical approach than a theoretical approach. So this is it from me for now in this session. Next week, in another session on ethics, I'm going to take another issue and talk about it. Thank you.